of the city-county getting together at some point. Unity in the region, I think, is the bigger issue here. There have been several proposals. One would sort of erase the lines, and St. Louis City would become part of the county again. One would include a merger of sorts between governments, which brings up a lot of questions. The big issue is St. Louis at a disadvantage compared to other cities because of the 90 municipalities in the county and the city all vying for the same business? And that seems to be what's behind a lot of this. Mike Hania is our guest right now, and he is on the board or a member of Better Together, and also involved in real estate out in West County. Mike, how are you?
I'm great, Mark. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Sorry to pull you away from a Christmas party.
That's not a problem. Happy to have it in discussion.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe we can all come out when we're done talking here, and we'll have a cocktail with you.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine.
So, Mike, on this issue of I continue to use the word merger. Maybe that's not exactly what everybody has in mind, but it just kind of rolls off the tongue easily. About bringing the city and the county efforts together again. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think that's such an important issue?
Well, it's really not a merger, Mark. The city of St. Louis is also a county right now. So the duplicity of county municipal functions is pretty abhorrent and becomes a very inefficient and very heavily taxed burden. That's totally unnecessary. If the city were the 91st municipality within St. Louis County would handle the county functions that are currently doubly done by the city of St. Louis. The city of St. Louis would not do anything else. It would still be a city, no different than Creve Coeur, Chesterfield, Florissant. It would be just another city inside of St. Louis County. Yet the efficiencies in terms of one county government governing the 1.3 million population becomes far more efficient because, as you and I had a brief conversation, St. Louis County and St. Louis City, this area, is one of the most efficient municipally run operations in the Midwest, and puts us in a very uncompetitive format when we compete for businesses who are located in St. Louis, like Indianapolis, Louisville, Nashville, others.
Well, you told me earlier that you quoted a figure on the amount of money that you think is either wasted or spent unnecessarily on regional development efforts. Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, it's not a guesstimate. What we did in quantifying it was to figure out what does it cost on a per capita basis to run municipal operations in peer cities, and that's done in the private sector for peer group comparisons on a regular basis. In St. Louis, it costs per capita, and by per capita I mean every man, woman, and child, 1.3 million in St. Louis City and County. It costs $1,917 per year to run all of our municipal services, police, fire, etc., including government. In Indianapolis, it costs $1,300 per capita. Well, if you do the numbers, that's $775 million per year of wasted, unnecessary expenditures in the St. Louis marketplace to run 91 municipalities. And if you think about all of just the big controversy with the MLS soccer stadium, think about what this town could do in terms of infrastructure improvement or sports programs with an extra $775 million that's really wasted on unnecessary duplicating municipal government systems.
And the other argument that I've heard is that you've got 30 or 40 or 50 different economic development managers vying for the same businesses.
Well, it's worse than that. We end up competing with each other. Every town, just Hazelwood, Florissant, just had a big deal with a Walmart moving down the street 2 miles from where it was and getting $7 million in TIF. We end up pillaging our municipalities adjoining to us to compete for businesses that are already there. That's crazy. We should be one region, and we should be competing against Des Moines, against Memphis, against Indianapolis, Louisville. We're competing with ourselves. It's just not smart and very, very unproductive.
I know you said earlier when we talked that it all gets down to people not wanting to give up their fiefdom.
Well, that's part of it. But, it's funny. The city of St. Louis is made up of a whole bunch of neighborhoods. And I bet everybody that's listening to you right now knows where St. Louis Hills is in the city of St. Louis. And it has its neighborhood associations, and they govern that, and they have their CCRs, their covenant restrictions. And so they can impose neighborhood and regulatory issues such as whether or not you can put a deck on, how much work to have, all of that, within those subdivisions and within those neighborhoods. And they still have the identity of that they're a neighborhood. You do not have to be an incorporated municipality to have an identity and to have some regulatory influence on what goes on in your neighborhood. What you have, though, is 91 mayors, 91 city managers, 57 police departments, and many of which will not conform to the same standards that the county executive has asked for. In fact, much of the municipal league is suing St. Louis County because they're trying to impose minimum police standards just to be able to get ahead of any potential police issues where someone may be unfairly treated. That's crazy. We should have one or just a few governing authorities over that with some best practice standards that are done and not have all this fighting taking place.
So let's assume for a moment that you were even able to put together some sort of regional agreement that we would eliminate all of this infighting and we'd have a board that with a single focus of bringing business here, and then that board would decide where those businesses located. You're still going to hack off a lot of people who are going to feel like certain cities are still getting all of the goods and services and money that's being brought in. I'm not sure that solves the problem.
No, that's not the case at all. Right now we have a joint, the city and county is working together in economic development. But where the business locates has nothing to do with what St. Louis County Economic Development suggests they go to. That business will locate and expand and grow in the marketplaces within St. Louis area that they feel best works for their business, period. It's up to the business to make that decision. The key would be it's on an equal footing so that instead of going to Chesterfield, somebody goes to Creve Coeur or Florissant because they can access a higher density population, for instance. And the entitlements, we're not competing against each other. They're on a level playing field. So then it gets down to cost of the ground, cost of construction, and what are you accessing in that sub-market. So just the reverse. It would level the playing field, and every city would be able to compete for it. But if you think about it, if somebody is looking to build a 20-acre office park, that municipality needs to have 20 acres that's conducive to building an office park. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to compete for that. So those that do have it would then be offered in the same fashion, and the business gets to make the decision as to whether or not it works for them. And that's how it should work.
Well, I've heard that one thing the cities want to do is share resources like fire services and police services. There are a lot of pension issues there and other lines that would have to be drawn and crossed and figured out before anything like that could happen, correct?
No, not at all. There's, in terms of shared services, how many times is there a police chase and how many municipalities do they go through, including crossing the river to get into Illinois or get into St. Charles? I mean, there has to be coordinated police services. Major fire incidents require major cooperation through fire districts. All of that can be done in cooperative fashion and done on one 911 system that can reach out to everybody that right now they don't even communicate with each other on different walkie-talkies. You cannot effectively have first responders in multiple municipalities work together to fight an incident, whether it be a terrorist incident or a fire or some, a bank robbery, whatever it might be.
So, Mike, I'm going to run out of time. I got about a minute and a half here left, but I just want to be clear. Are you in support of this Unigov type of situation in Louisville and these places where you basically erase municipal lines and make it one big central government?
No, not necessarily, but if that's what works, that'd be great. I think what's probably going to end up happening in this marketplace is the 91 municipalities, including the city, in one big unified St. Louis County government will end up going to maybe 8 or 10 boroughs, kind of like New York City's 5 boroughs. So, and those larger areas would then govern themselves underneath St. Louis County. And I think there's been a few folks that have put out plans of that nature that make sense. But what I am for is an efficient government operation so that we can effectively compete for businesses and growth in this town for jobs. And right now, we are so inept and so incapable of competing effectively that it has to be changed and people have to wake up.
Mike Hania, with Better Together. Listen, I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Yep. Have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for your time this afternoon. We will agree to disagree on the political nightmare that all of that would be, but we're going